Welcome into Lock It In with Cam Rogers. Very excited to have my second guest of the week, my second Pro Bowl athlete. We had Glover Quinn on earlier this week. We've got Jonathan Stewart, former NFL running back, on the program right now. Hello, Jonathan. How are we?
How you doing, Cam? You're doing well. I'm doing well.
It's great to have you here as we break down conference championship weekend. Before we get there, of course, I have to ask you a couple of Panthers questions. Give me your assessment of the number one overall picks season, Bryce Young.
Bryce Young, in a couple words, I think it was a good pick. I think right now what people need to realize is we're a little bit of up a creek without a paddle. Given, a lot of people want to, point fingers at a lot of people, but I think at the end of the day, players play, coaches coach. It comes down to execution at the end of the day. And you got to be able to have a coaching staff that can prepare these guys and to put them in situations to win. And I just don't think, the Carolina Panthers had obviously the staff to understand what was in that locker room, especially on the offensive side, to get these guys in positions to win. We saw splashes of what Bryce Young can do and what he's capable of. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about, how he's able to make these low percentage throws and hitting guys right in the hands or right in the area where only they can catch the ball. And so when you see things like that, you get excited because we know the missing elements. We need to, beefing up the offensive line. Maybe get, a receiver in there that can be a speed guy. And when I say a speed guy, I mean a guy that can catch the ball on a screen and take it to the house.
Right.
Make guys miss, break tackles, be a playmaker, be an X factor. Those types of things. Because you look at the playoffs right now. Every team has one of those guys. And so they also have a beefy offensive line that can protect. And they have a great defensive line that can get after the quarterback. Right. So I think our defensive side, they do a really good job. I think Evero's put those guys in positions to be successful. I mean, going into this year, that defense, the roster, the depth chart, none of these guys have probably played in a 3-4, dominant defense. And so the coaching on that side seems like it's been working. Seems like guys have been able to take in, what's being asked of them and being able to put the product on the field. You look at guys like Derek Brown. That's the one guy that I'm very excited about. If you're a coach and you're looking, to be a part of, a team, you want to go to a team that has a Derek Brown on it.
Yeah.
Not just for what he's done this year on the field, but his mindset and his drive. He's, a pro's pro is what I like to put it. And so get a couple of those guys on the team this offseason, you're trending in the right direction.
Feels like there's always an opening to win that division as well. I mean, it came down to the final weeks as far as the NFC South is concerned. I do want to ask you, because a lot of pundits are doing this, Jonathan, and I'm sure you are of the mindset, whoa, let's slow down. But the whole what if game, what if we got CJ Stroud, right? I knew you're going to react that way. What are your thoughts about people who say that?
Man, look, what if is for people that are sitting, twiddling their thumbs. I mean, you can't sit there and twiddle your thumbs. There's a lot of things that you should be doing with your time and with your mind. What we have to focus on is what's happening now. Like, let's bring our energy to what's good now. If you're talking about what if, it's because you're dwelling in what's bad.
Sure.
And so what's your mindset going to be? Like, don't put that on, Panther fans. Don't put that on people that are looking, for the bright spots, to be sitting here thinking about, oh, what if this? What if that? Well, no, what about right now? Mm-hmm. Right now we have Bryce Young, and he's a good quarterback. And he hasn't even scratched, the surface. Put it that way. And we still feel good about him. Like we've went through a year where we've been able to kind of evaluate him in a rookie season, and we're not in that locker room. We're not in that organization. So we don't really know exactly ins and outs. Shoot, for all we know, this guy he's learned a lot. He's had to have learned a lot this season. I mean, you learn, by licking your wounds, looking at them, be reminded of them, know what happened, move forward, fix the problem, and keep pressing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this season is for Bryce Young. Is these types of seasons are going to make him why they're going to be great. And I think he just needs, again, beef up the offensive line, give him a playmaker that can take one to to the house off of a quick pass, a guy that can go and he can throw it up if he's in desperate need, and he'll just come down with it. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds like a Steve Smith to me.
Bit. Yeah.
But every team has one of those guys. Not quite like a Steve Smith, though. I just think that everyone that kind of does this whole shift of, oh man, CJ Stroud had a great year. Not every rookie quarterback has great years, nor should you expect a rookie quarterback to be in playoff contention in our situation, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have to, bring it in and reel it in and live within the reality. It's not Bryce Young. He should have been able to overcome all the barriers that have taken place for him this year. No. Put anyone in that situation, they're going to tap out. And he didn't tap out.
You don't have time to throw. You don't have time to throw. I don't care if you're Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, or Bryce Young.
And if you really want to put apples to apples, we saw what happened to CJ Stroud when he didn't have time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he didn't play a bad game. He just didn't have time to throw against Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. We saw that happen. The Baltimore Ravens game made the Houston Texans look like the Carolina Panthers. And that's the reason why they're in the position that they're in.
The what ifs are for the 4-hour talk radio shows, Jonathan. So let's live in reality. Let's talk about conference championship weekend, shall we? And let's talk about my Ravens as they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes got the win in Buffalo a week ago. Now he goes on the road to Baltimore, about 40 minutes away from me. Jonathan, your impressions of this matchup, what are the key storylines for you?
I think at the end of the day, man, the Baltimore Ravens are playing at a high level on defense. I mean, last week alone, them coming off of a bye week, guys haven't played in, weeks, right? So that's hard to do, especially on offense. But what I was really surprised about was their defense. Their defense came out for that game like they were playing games at practice or something. They didn't miss a beat. And I think at the end of the day, I think they're built to be more destructive in the sense of what they can do to teams, especially in the playoffs, especially at home. Now I know the Chiefs, last week they went into Buffalo and they treated that like it was a home game. But I feel like last week there was something there in the air that said the Bills probably should have won that game.
Yeah.
And so you take that in the sense of Chiefs versus Ravens. I'm not totally confident in the fact that they're going to be able to come into Baltimore and be able to, stop the bleeding. Because I think that's what the Ravens do well. I mean, you look at the stats. I mean, Lamar throws for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, but they run for like 200 and some yards. Right. Their tactic is, hey, look, you're not going to come into our home and just think you're going to score at will or move the ball down the field at will. We're going to play field management. We're going to be patient. And when we get close enough, we'll strike. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what makes them a really good team and a hard team to play against. The defense is a huge part of that. Now, they're not great. They haven't been great in the run, but they were great last week. And so if that, and I mean, obviously too, the Houston Texans they haven't been that, good of a running team. You have the Chiefs that have been a really good running team, but the Baltimore Ravens are as well. And so if you're going to play that game of, who's going to win the running game battle, I wouldn't want to play that battle. The Chiefs have to absolutely depend on Patrick Mahomes. And, he has to, if they're going to win, it's going to be with him doing the Patrick Mahomes magic.
And the question there is, how sustainable is that? Because at the end of the day, you have to win in the trenches. And Jonathan, you watched the game. I mean, Kansas City got pushed around in that run defense. And now you have Lamar Jackson and company, this offensive line. Like, I feel like we can control that game, quicken the game, play action off of that, Zay Flowers, Aguilar, etc. And then Mahomes has limited possessions. I think that's the formula. What do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly the formula. That's the formula that the Bills were trying to try to put on the table last week. But what got in their way was trying to be, trickery on the punt. Yeah. I think that was stupid. Just follow your game plan and trust it and be patient, right? Patient game. That's what the Ravens are going to do. If you're the Chiefs, you know that. So don't play that game with them. If you need to score and that's what your bread and butter is, then go out there and score. Because what you haven't been doing this year is scoring like you have been in the past. Like I think I saw some stat like I don't know, like what's their average score? Like I think they average like 20 points a game, 21 points a game.
It's pretty low.
And that's low for them. I mean, we're used to seeing them score like 28, 31, like, and if they're not able to do that because they're, playing the patient game too, they're not going to win this game.
Yeah. That's going to be fun. All right, Jonathan, if you had to pick the game, and I feel like I know where you're going with this, who wins?
I'm going with the Chiefs.
Oh my God.
I'm joking.
Killing me.
No, man, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he is, if you had to go and rank as far as like, the tangibles here, I feel like the Chiefs have the better coach. I feel like the Chiefs have I feel like the Baltimore Ravens have the better quarterback. I feel like for this game, absolutely.
Okay. Sure.
And as far as the offense as a whole, I feel like Baltimore has the better offense. And I feel like Baltimore has the better defense. Now, the X factor here, to me, it's got to be Travis Kelce. It's got to be. And you can say Travis Kelce / Patrick Mahomes, because those are the plays that have happened, hence last week, that hasn't been happening throughout their season. Connecting with Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce, that's a whole different ball game. And that's what I'm referring to as far as if they're going to win this game, it's not the patient game. You're going to have some big plays. And your big plays come from Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce, which opens up the rest of the receiver core.
Here's what I will say. I wake up every day grateful for Lamar Jackson because there is a lot of bad football out there. So we get good football every week, courtesy of the soon-to-be MVP. All right, let's talk about the NFC side of things, Jonathan. Not going to lie, both teams have their issues. Like San Francisco was kind of lucky to win that game against Green Bay, and the Lions defense continues to just get gashed. I don't know how sustainable that is, but your thoughts on the matchup?
Now, I will say the Lions defense on their rush defense is pretty solid. And I just feel like that's their bread. That is a strong point for them. But for the 49ers, you have Deebo Samuel, who's a huge part of this offense. And once he got hurt, I didn't see any receiver screens. I didn't see any reverses with the receivers. So it went strictly to a fundamental offense, if you would say, where you're running the ball, play action, throw the ball down the field, hopefully you connect. And they did. And so they were able to, adjust and make arrangements. Shout out to, Shanahan there, because you have to be able to adapt. And so I want the 49ers to win because CMC, he deserves to be in this situation after this year. I feel like he is actually the MVP of the National Football League this year. Without him, they're not in this position. I don't care what you say. But they have a hefty task, because a lot of what makes them really good is Debo. And if Debo plays, I actually think that's a crutch that's gonna fall, because he's not gonna be the same. I think it was a shoulder injury, and he's a physical player, and that takes that out of his game, and that can hurt them more than it would help them if he does play. So I mean, it's kind of hard to really say who's going to win that game, because there's some variables there, and the big one is Debo. But I feel like the Lions, their weak point is the passing game. They can't stop anyone from passing the ball. And if Brock Purdy, comes out and shows that he's just striking, that's going to be a problem, because obviously they have been striking all season in the passing game, 9.3 yards, per pass. I mean, that's huge. And when you're talking about, defense that, gives up 7.8 yards per pass, you're probably thinking to yourself, we got to make sure we tighten up over here, fellas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Baker Mayfield made some plays last week. Obviously, Matt Stafford did a couple of weeks ago. So that's where my concern is. Although, I mean, is Brock Purdy, Jonathan, ready for this moment? Because he didn't look great a week ago, and he still has a small sample size in terms of playoff experience.
This is my thing on Brock Purdy. Everyone has a lot to say about him. And I think it's time to just hey, look, stop treating this guy like he's not a pro. So everyone has bad games. Tom Brady has had bad games. You talk about the greatest athlete of all time, of any sort of sport. You talk about Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. You can go down the list. Every single one of those guys or women has had a bad game, has had a slow start. But what I like about Brock Purdy last week was he started slow. So what? When it mattered, he made plays. He dropped dimes. I mean, Jennings, there was a throw to Jennings last week. I'm just people say that he can't make plays. That's not a basic throw. Okay? That is a dime
game
across
manager,
the middle. Right? Yeah, that's not a game. I mean, there's a truth to that statement, as far as game managers, but that's not a bad thing. Game managers, you need those on certain teams. Let your running back be the star. Let that guy be the game changer. Let Deebo Samuels be the game changer. You just manage the game. You manage where they get the ball, how they get the ball, and how efficiently they get the ball. And so that's not a bad or a knock on him, because he's a great pro and he can make great plays. In order for guys to really be successful in an offense like that, where things have to go well, you have to have a guy that can deliver and execute and doesn't do too much or doesn't try to be something that he's not. And that's what he's really good at. He's good at playing the Brock Purdy quarterback passing game.
When we're talking about NFL players, Jonathan, obviously it is the definition of splitting hairs, because if you take a snap in the NFL, you are 0.0001% of athletes in the world. And you're starting quarterback in the NFL, 0.00001%. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and you take his situation, he was the last draft pick. So you put another couple zeros on there.
Sure. Exactly. So true. All right. So if you had to pick a winner in this one, tough one for me, I feel more confident about the AFC side, but who wins?
I personally want to see the 49ers win this game. And the reason why is because I want to see CMC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The reasons why that might not happen is because the Detroit Lions are playing really well on offense. And I think that is why people can't really draw a conclusion, because they might play bad on defense. And Brock Purdy might take advantage of that in the passing game. I think the Detroit Lions offense outweighs their limitations on defense, is basically kind of the story there. Yeah. And so I think if the offensive line is able to create lanes in a Detroit stingy rushing defense and give Christian McCaffrey some lanes to run, and if they figure out ways to get him, open in the passing game, which is pretty easy, just line up in the slot and he'll shake somebody loose, and if you focus on that, he'll be open. And I think that's their bread and butter, and hopefully they come up with some different looks that Detroit hasn't seen, and that's all predicated on on Shanahan.
Okay, there you go. Jonathan Stewart joining Lock It In with Cam Rogers. Before you go, as a player, Jonathan, was there a linebacker that kept you up at night? Oh, I don't want to get hit by him kind of situation. If you had to give me one name, who is it?
Man, that's a tough one.
There were some good ones in that division too for quite a while.
Yeah. Man. I'm not even going to give everybody that credit. I'm going to say practice. The linebacker that kept me up at night was Thomas Davis.
There you go. That's a good one.
Thomas Davis, which was my teammate. And basically because my rookie year, he introduced me to the NFL during one of our 2-a-day practices. And it was not full contact. And he picked me up off the ground, off the edge on a power play. It was an A-gap run, and he came off the edge, and he met me in the A-gap. That's how fast he got there. No, boy. It was not fun. But
your bell rung.
I don't know, man. I think about Lofton. He was always someone that was just very dense. I hated playing against him because it was just anyone that was just very strong and sturdy and basically built like a running back, didn't want to block him. So I don't know. That kind of threw me off. I got to think about that more.
We'll touch base in a new episode of Lock It In. Jonathan Stewart joining the show. I appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks, man.